composition of the evaluation? Yes, it is a composition of the evaluation. I think I had made it very clear the pilot study was supposed to be primarily a mix of secondary data wherein you get information about the company and you keep questions open-ended and whatever your views are in 2 to 3 pages max, you have to submit. Now, based on the pilot study is where you're supposed to be looking at the main study. So how do you go about the main study? I'll perhaps be sending across a mail to you tomorrow end of the day, along with the deadlines also. Now, I also would say that this week, please expect your first quiz, which again, as I said, is going to be open book, open note, open discussions, right? When is something that I cannot tell you, but I'll ensure I give you at least an hour's notice for the quiz. Now, when I say an hour's notice, it was a Saturday, it was a Sunday, it was a holiday. A quiz can be any day. I told that in the beginning of the class also. I've been getting mails from our group of students today, and I'm sure these people have gone out with friends to, for lunch. Copy paste करके भेजे. Now tell me, leave of absence also word by word has been copied across by 3 different students, which means they're all going together for somewhere. Please tell them I'm not authorizing such leaves. Now coming back, what we wanted to discuss today, we will look at services marketing today. And when I say services marketing today, we are talking about the fact that everything, I think in one of the classes I told you, everything that we buy today, whether it's a product, whether it is a service, everything is linked to the service. What differentiates a product today, again, is the service it renders to the customer. And gone are the days when a product is normally made with certain specification and the customer has to buy it. Today, the things that customer is a co-creator. The customer co-creates a product. Classic examples is, I'm sure which is more visible is when you hear the brand IKEA gets the customer to design the product. Likewise, also most companies today, what they look at today is taking a feedback. Arpan, I'll come to you. Hold on.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Your voice is breaking, sir. So some background noises are coming back, sir.
There's a background noise for me.
Yes, sir.
See if just hold on. I'm changing the Wi-Fi link. Just give me a minute. Is this better? A bit better right now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So what I was discussing about today is that the concept of services has changed from what it was earlier when we used to say services. It was something that we referred to, something to do with the maybe medical facilities. Going to a doctor was a service. But today, even if you look at anything that you buy, the pen that you buy, the mobile phone that you buy, right, is something which is differentiated from the rest of the products because of the service it offers. So look at how services today has become a very important constituent in terms of one product from the other. Now, this has led marketers to a concept called as a SD logic. You might come across this concept, which is called as a SD logic. What does an SD logic mean? Service dominant. D stands for dominant, service dominant logic today. Marketers use this terminology in terms of revisiting the strategies, designing the strategies, saying that anything that we make today, anything that we thing that we need to focus on is the service component. So when we talk about the service component, we talk about the 4 P's. We talk about product, price, place, promotion. We also talk about processes. We also talk about people. Brand with a with an excellent state-of-the-art technology, a brilliant product. But if the customer is not able to understand your product, if the customer finds that, for example, it's a product which is purely and purely available on the e-commerce sites. So if the customer finds it very difficult to log in and get into that, then obviously the purpose of the entirety is lost. So primarily, first and foremost, how is a service different from a product? 1, what are the typical characteristics of services? 3, we'll talk about the marketing mix of services, or marketing mix typically followed in services. Root causes of service failure. At times, so when we say product and when we say services, as we go along, you will understand that there is a big line of difference between certain attributes. So when we talk about service failure, it is very. So we will look at what are the root causes of service failure. We'll look at something which is called as a service quality gap model, or a ServQual model, as marketers normally talk about. Now, again, I repeat, the ServQual model is not just related to only services. ServQual model is also to the products per se. Right? Having said that, I will throw it open to the class right now. This is section C or section D? Section C. Perfect. So, so those of you who have switched off your videos right now, as I can see, please do not come back to me saying that why was marks deducted. I review the entire video, which I keep on a recording mode after the class is over. Switched off, please switch it on. And for those who are absent today in particular, CR, what is the strength of your section? So tell these 10 students who are absent today that instead of -1, I will particular class. Those who are coming for the class should be awarded with marks, and those who are not coming should be penalized. 10 students absence, I will not tolerate it at all. Now coming back to what are the different, or how is a service different from a product? Then we go ahead and look at what are the other areas that we have. So how is a service, how is services, or how is a service different from a product? Or how do you define a service? Yes, Arpan?
So for me, a product is a one-time sell. Like if we are selling a product, it's one time only. The customer will buy it one time, but service is something that will be delivered throughout the life of the product. Like once the product is sold, then throughout the services will be given by the company. May it be doorstep or online, may it be any type, but the services will last long than the product. So I believe that that is the major difference between a service and a product.
Okay, I'm not commenting right now. I'll park it right now. Shreya?
The services are something which cannot, they are intangible. Like products are tangible assets, like we can touch them, we can feel them, but services can be experienced through their extra customer service or their core product. If their core product they're offering is a service base, then that is the offering they are providing, but that cannot be touched or tasted or used as a product.
Very good. Tangible in nature, you cannot feel them, you cannot. So something that cannot be seen, something that cannot be experienced, something that cannot be felt. So it is intangible in nature. Hence, when we talk about a service today, it is much more a challenging job in the services sector to sell a service rather than a product, because in a product, you have something tangible, shape, size, color of the product available, which you can show the customer. But when we talk about services, something intangible, the service of a doctor, so what happens here when we talk about services? The brand name matters a lot, because it is through that you get to understand, because somebody who's already experienced it will come back and say this particular, the services of this particular doctor is good, is a wonderful surgeon, is a wonderful dentist, right? Or is a wonderful actor. So in the intangibility and tangibility part, what
Sir, in the product, the need of the human is fulfilled. Other than need, like in the services part, the relationship we maintain with our customers, the trust we build up is more important.
in terms of, so Itishri says that in terms of services, what is important is the trust and the relationship that you build with the customer. Okay.
Sir, in my point of view, the product can be replaced or returned, but in we cannot replace or return that product, that service. And apart from that, the product sold can be identical. That may be the identical or the same, but a service, it may not be identical or it totally different. Like service is never exactly same as the second service.
Sir, in my opinion, services is very important, but because it is something which helps a company to create a brand. Like we all know, Maruti is known for its services, cheap cost service. Right now, Maruti. That's why many people opt for Maruti Suzuki cars other than Honda, Hyundai cars. So services helps to create the brand.
So you're trying to say, Avik, that the service is an important criteria in terms. Okay.
So products are manufactured and stored, but service cannot be manufactured and stored.
Very good. So there is a question of perishability. You cannot store.
Yes,
You cannot store services. And what is also very important is, because of the perishability in nature, it is something that one of your friends, somebody talked about right now, that so he said it's a one-time process. So what we are saying, right? So there is no separate, there is an inseparability factor, right? The manufacturer and the service that it offers, or the service provider and the service that it offers, are synonymous with each other. Surgery. So the operation will be done by the surgeon himself. Without the surgeon, you cannot do the operation. So the services of the surgeon is synonymous with the service that he offers, that of operating the patient. Okay.
Services are highly customized. They are different for different customers, but the products are similar, or at times customized.
Okay. So
Same for everyone.
So there is an amount of heterogeneity in it. That's what you're trying to say, that services will vary from. So if you look at maybe a Domino's or a Pizza Hut or model, the focus is on the service delivery. The focus is on the product that it offers, as also the service that it offers. Because these brands, as I think Avik talked about, are built in terms of the whole paradigm, the whole ground reality is that the brand stands on the service it offers. Good. Next.
So, sir, basically in product there is a time lag between when the product is produced and when it is consumed. But in services, the time of production and consumption is the same. Like there is no time lag.
Absolutely. So a services has to be consumed as fast as it is delivered, is what you're trying to say, right? So that is the inseparability factor that we also talked about. Good. Aditya?
So when we purchase a product, the product can be returned if we don't like it. But as in a service, the service we don't like it. But in the service case, once we get the service, we cannot return or do something about it.
Good, Aditya. So you're essentially trying to say the irreplaceability factor. It is irreversible in nature. एक बार once the services is produced, you cannot take it back and store it somewhere. It has to be a continuous and an ongoing process. Good. Next. I'm
So
not talking about team praise. You guys have to come forward here.
Between the two, the product and the service, is that products are enable service and service are support the product. What I believe.
Can you explain that?
So suppose we buy a product and after service, and through the service we recognize the product, how it is and how it's gonna help. We recognize the products.
Okay. So you are saying a service augments a product, right? So we buy a product because of the service it offers. So
Yes,
the service differentiation will be the key differentiator when the customer is looking at buying the product, right?
Yes.
Good. Augmenting the product or one of the most augmentation of product. This is the differentiator also. Good, Divyajyoti.
Sir, I would like to say that in services, we provide the physical evidence, but in product, we do not provide that. Like, for example, in hotels, we've seen the ambience they give us that helps values the services more than in that way.
Okay.
Sir, in case of product, we only can charge our customer only once when we sell it. But in terms of service, every time we give the service to customer, we charge from them.
I get your point, Sharda, but basically what you're trying to say is every time you provide a service, we charge them. Not necessarily so. So tomorrow, what I can do, for instance, if I have somebody coming in, let's say a typical promotional scheme at a Domino's. Today he walks in and I give him a gift coupon or a gift voucher and say, within 15 days or within 10 days, if you come in, present this gift coupon and you get, maybe a pizza free. So it's not that every other time I will have to charge him, but what you're essentially saying is that at the time of delivery of the service, in typically a services sector, it is chargeable, but not always, Sharda, as you said, right?
Sir, we can say that in product is designed to satisfy the needs of the customer, while services is required to maintain the relationship between the customers and the brand.
Good point, Sunit. But what you can also say. Now, this is a generic belief that but let me tell you, when I'm talking about co-creation of a product, I talked about co-creation of a product. We are basically talking about that the consumer is also the producer. Now, the consumer is also the producer, means he is co-creating the product. He's helping the producer in terms of creating the product. What does IKEA do? And IKEA says, I will accordingly design the product and give it to you. Today, if you look at a lot of customizations that happen, I mean, take a very simple example. If you're talking about a cake, right? You walk into the cake shop today. Gone are the days when there were 5-6 types of cakes available. He gives you options. You tell him, I want a cake which can be in this particular shape, and I want this to be put up, and I want that to be put up. The same service delivery is offered to you. Today, you walk into a restaurant. Earlier days, there was a fixed menu. Whatever was there in the menu, you would order and you would eat. Today, while a menu is done, you also, in a good restaurant, you can always tell the waiter, look, I want less of salt. Don't put, let's say, basil leaves in it, and then make it. So you are actually co-creating, the service delivery at this point of time. So I take your point, but the fact is today the customer is also a co-creator. Now you might come across a terminology called as prosumer. OSUMER. What does this mean? I'm sure you would have come across this term because it's very much used these days, particularly when co-creation with customers is on the rise, this is something that many companies basically a prosumer mean, PROSUMER.
So product aligned with the consumer choices.
So a person who is a consumer and a producer at the same time.
Absolutely, bang on, Rishabh. So what we are talking about a prosumer is where the consumer, the word comes from consumer and producer. So the consumer is also the producer. Why? Because he's co-creating the product. He's helping in terms of delivering the product or the service. Right? Good. Now coming back to the people who have raised their hands. Go ahead.
Sir, can
In case of product, we can replace the product, or in due course of time, the product will get outdated. But we cannot say that in case of services. Like, for example, Netflix, they're providing their services that will not go outdated.
Okay.
Sir, can you say that the product can be resold, but service?
I think one of your
resold.
friends had talked about it, because it's not about question of a resold, because a service once delivered is something that is irreversible. You know, if a doctor has already performed a surgery and उसके बाद आप बोलोगे कि नहीं मेरे को ये surgery नहीं चाहिए था, मेरे को वो surgery चाहिए था, the doctor is obviously going to charge you more for that or look at whatever possible. So irreversibility.
Sir, products are more likely selling the relationship.
Now I you know what? Let's make it more simple. I'm not saying you are wrong. So Subhajit, what I'm basically trying to say is, when we talk about a value positioning of the value positioning of the product is directly related to the service it offers. Your statement, and I'm just putting it back into a more marketing terminology. The value positioning of the product is primarily dependent on the service it offers, or the value positioning of the proportional is directly proportional to the quality of service being offered. Right? It is not quantity of service, but the quality of service being offered. Because understand, in the services sector, quality plays a bigger role. So the quality of service, right? Okay, now there is some CR, there is somebody who's been who's there for quite some time now. Please tell the student that I will not allow, so maybe till 2:40 I allow today come in, but not at 3 o'clock. I will not allow students to come. So there are, I see 3 people, yes. 3 people in the waiting room, but I'm not allowing them. Yeah. Now, coming back to, what do you think are the key factors efficient service delivery? I'm saying, what are the key factors or key attributes that you feel are important for effective service delivery? Go ahead.
Sir, customizing product as per the customer.
Okay. Customizing the product.
To be very accurate at what the customers actually want. We can provide the service only in something which the customers want, sir.
So understanding exactly the needs of the customer and then developing your services is important.
So
Availability of services in every so that the customer will easily access the service.
Good. Availability of services.
Yes, sir. What I was going to say, time and place.
Yeah. So place is what we talked about.
So the more conveniently they reach up to the customer, like within 24 hours, within 10 hours, they say we can give our services. Like Urban Clap say that within 24 hours of booking, we can reach you and service your thing. So
very good.
Yeah.
very JIT concept, which was more popularized by Indigo Airlines when, the on-time schedules, on-time departures, even in terms of the lag in terms of the airports also. So Indigo was a classic example to talk about JIT. So
The
So customer
reliability,
feedback so that we can improve.
yeah, customer feedback so that you help in terms of continuous improvement of your product. Okay.
the reliability, like the company is reliable for whatever customer is, like that customer is satisfied, and the company is also responsible for the satisfaction of customers.
So reliability and trust are important for us as a service differentiation. Okay. So tell me, how does the reliability and trust come from? It only comes from.
So from the company that they provide services satisfied.
Okay.
So what I suggest is reliability comes from expertise.
Very good.
Like brands, so we consider them as reliable brands.
So one is in terms of the expertise they have. Second is in terms of sustainability of the services that they offer. See, when you talk about, somebody talked about Maruti, somebody talked about, now Rishabh has talked about the Tatas. So when we walk into any of the service centers of a Tata or a service center of a Maruti, it is expected that the quality of service is going to be the same all throughout. But having said that, we also said services are heterogeneous in nature. So there would be services being offered in, let us say, a Nagpur, and a services being offered in, let's say, a Ladakh would obviously be different. But what most companies look at today, whether it is product or a services company, is to, yeah. What else?
So transparency and communication play a major factor to become the service effective.
Very good. The transparency and Pratyush, effective communication. What did you say?
Yes, effective communication to
So,
make
yeah, go ahead.
the communication should be both and effective so that the service could be more effective.
So one consumer is able to understand what is it that you're going to provide to him is something that is very important, that the marketer needs to look at, having my communication message the same. Now, having said that, keeping the communication message the same, there could be something that can go wrong in terms of service delivery. Or let me put this question back. What do you think are the root causes of service failure? Or what do you think are the causes of service failure?
Some misunderstanding.
Lack of expertise.
Now, let me go back to Pratyush when you said that misunderstanding between both the parties. Who are these parties?
Like employee and customer.
Or you're saying
employee and customer.
So you're saying employee who is going to be the service
provider,
the service provider, or who delivers the service.
Yes, sir.
And between the customer. Okay. What else? Understanding what he wants. Yes, Pratyush, you wanted to say something.
Another one is, sir, there is communication between the department. Like sometimes it's between the organization happen. That might be create a misunderstanding, which can make the service less effective.
Okay.
So resources can be also
very good. Availability of resources, definitely, yes. So I think place, availability, location. So when we are talking about the 4 P's of services, also the availability also. So for example, pizza lover, and the area that he stays, he hardly has any pizza shop. So when he has a choice of options, he doesn't have a Domino's or a Pizza Hut near him, he might not look at the nearest pizza shop available and scout for a Pizza Hut or a Domino's, because he feels the perception of service, the perception of quality in these branded outlets is something that is very, very high. It could be the wife coming in and his trust in maybe let's say a brown and cream in Bhubaneswar, right? A brown and cream user is somebody who might not necessarily shift even if you have a foreign brand coming in. The other way, where brand equity of the services delivered, and so a lot of factors go into it. A brown and cream may be very popular, maybe with respect to the cake that it does, maybe with respect to the service delivery, commitment to time. So these things are something that can be kept into it. Yes, Sonali.
This failure may also be attributed to the fact that sometimes the message of the product is not conveyed properly and clearly to the customers. This may be due to the sales representatives are not clear, or they do not convey it in a good medium.
Yeah, that's what I think one of your batchmates was talking about in terms of effective communication, right? So it can be both ways. One is not necessarily how the person or the person at the delivery point delivers the service. It can also be in terms of what is being branded. So supposing it's a big brand, right, in terms of services it offers. I mean, I let's say a big brand name in terms of hair cutting. Let's say what is this guy's name here?
Javed Habib.
Javed Habib. For example, of the consumer is, if I walk into a Javed Habib, I'm going to get a good haircut, I'm going to have a good hairstyle, I'm going to have a proper hair treatment. So likewise, these parameters in terms of service delivery is something that is predefined. But if a Javed Habib franchisee has not been able to communicate the same, he goes there, he doesn't find any signage, he doesn't know what are the services being offered. So often it happens that even a manufacturer, so look at how it can go wrong. So tomorrow, when we talk services that should offer, the information comes from what you guys have been doing. आप लोग जो study कर रहे हो ना, pilot study, main study. So there would be a study done by a lot of agencies these days. You have a lot of market research agencies to do it. Most companies have their own own team in place to do a market survey. So once a market survey is done, accordingly, whether the right communication has been collected at the source point and passed on to the manufacturer, the first kind of gap that can happen. Then what is the gap that is, what does the consumer wants and what is it that the management has understood? There can be a gap. If the management has not understood the market demands properly and the consumer wants something else, then there is a big gap here. So this gap is difficult to fill if the ground reality or the ground information has not been collected. From there to telling the manufacturing, so what information the management collects, from there to telling the manufacturing or the production or the factory, saying that this is what needs to be produced, this is what the consumer wants. If they are not able to communicate, there is also another gap there. Now what happens is the production houses will manufacture something based on the input that goes from which was from the management to them. Now understand, yahan pe gadbadi hai. The market has not been able, the marketer has not been able to study the market properly. So this gap will obviously result in the third gap, which is the product that finally comes out is very, very different from what the consumer wants. It may not be very, very different, but will be different from what the consumer wants. His perception vis-a-vis the service of the product that has been manufactured, because there have been three gaps that have been identified here. Then comes the gap in terms of, if my marketing communication is hyped up, my marketing communication is where I talk about saying that this is what I'm offering, but actually jo manufacture hua hai, you do not have those necessary service attributes. So there is another gap that has happened in terms of the product or the service you are giving to the market vis-a-vis what is it that the consumer wants. Now understand, your marketing communication has gone and said, this is what my product or service has. But in actuality, when the services are being delivered, it is in sharp contrast. So if you look at all these different kinds of gaps, what is very important is we need to plug each of these gaps. Otherwise, for service delivery, there is a huge gap which is called as a, we in the books talk about this as a serve qual model. Serve stands from service, qual comes from quality. Serve qual model. Now, We talked about the root causes. Some of you talked about the product itself can be flawed. Some of you said the promotion can be flawed. Some of you said the place can be an issue. Now, what is also important is the process and the people. People, if you go back, we talked about internal branding some time back. Your own employees are people who need to believe into the service. Your own employees are people from whom you can understand what is it that the customer wants. Having talked about internal marketing, the next is external marketing, the one that you talked about. What is it that you're communicating? What is it that you're communicating to the customer? Are you actually delivering the same? The third, which is most important in services sector, is interactive marketing. Interactive marketing between the producer and the seller. So this interactive marketing or interactive branding, call it interactive marketing, is what I'm referring to as a terminology which we are using today as co-creation. Understand, many companies might ask you in your summer internships or in your final placements about co-creation. This is what co-creation is all about, right? Now, having said all these, what do you think in terms of pricing? So we've talked about place, we've talked about product, we talked about promotions also in terms of the communication message. In terms of pricing, how is services different from that of products? In terms of pricing, what do we do? If you go into a hotel industry today, right? You're traveling and you're booking a hotel. What is it that you look for in terms of pricing? Is pricing a differentiation at all? Does pricing play an important role in your decision-making process with respect to services? Let's say you have four comparative hotels that meets whatever criteria you're looking at. You've gone to Make My Trip, you've gone to Go Ibibo, you've gone to some place, you booked you're having options. How do you pick and choose from that option? There is a pricing attached to it also. So, khali price dekh ke aap jate ho kya? Ye 10,000 hai, wo 15,000 hai, 12,000. Does it happen that way? Or is it? Yes.
So we look at the value of money. Like if the hotel is providing more service, like better service, and we can like pay more. But if the hotel is paying less and cheap service, then we will of course not give more importance to that hotel.
Okay.
So we will definitely look at what all services the hotel is offering. Like if the hotel is offering pick and drop or some other amenities with the same pricing, so we will definitely go with that particular that particular thing.
Okay. Very good, Rishabh.
Sir, we can see that the quality of the services they provide and the experience we get from the services they provide. In that, we can differentiate the price. We can pay more for the quality and the experience.
Okay. Section C, at the same hands have been going up. Why are the rest of you so very quiet? I mean, as long as you don't want any marks, I have no issues, but I would be very happy to give marks to all of you in class participations. I mean, please don't hesitate. Don't think there is something wrong, there is something right. Please participate. Yep, next.
So in my point of view, here it comes the comparison phase. Like if we see pricing, then comparison comes to our mind suddenly. So we compare the products, seeing their service providing. So in this example of hotels, we will see different things like a free breakfast and the check-in, check-out times. Like sometimes people prefer 10 to 11 or 8 to 9. They're seeing their possibilities which they can board the hotel. So comparison matters a lot here.
So we will be seeing the bundle of services, like as discussed by my friends. If we are comparing 2 or 3 hotels, we will compare the bundle of services that they are providing, and as per the whichever is value for money for us, so we will select accordingly.
Very good, Shreya. Good. Bundling of benefits is what you're trying to say. Okay.
Yes, sir. That was my point. Okay.
So in case of hotels, location plays important role, sir. If it is near airport or railway station, and the reviews that other people have given to it, Yes, sir.
Hey, that's okay, Yash. See, I was talking, so that's with respect to place. When we are talking about the 4 P's of marketing, that's what I was talking about the pricing part of it. Acha, you're going to say that price may not be an important factor, but location.
Yes, sir. Other than price, these factors like location and
It is. But what I was trying to look at here is more to do with the was more to do with the pricing part of it. So, yeah, let's hear out the others.
Yes, the pricing plays a very vital role in the decision making part. Like for an example, we can say that pricing is the basis for attracting the customer attention, and it enforces the idea of the value for the money. For example, we can say that everybody must have seen that there is a filter process in every app. Like pricing, then it must have written low to high or high to low. For an average like middle class people, we always prefer low to high, because we prefer the lower price much more than the higher prices. So yes, in this way, pricing plays a very vital role in our decision making process, and we depend upon our money with reference to the value that are being provided to us.
Itishri, your point noted, but I couldn't really understand the point when you said that pricing is from low to high. So the customer normally prefers something that is lesser price than maybe a higher price. Is that what you're trying to say with respect to services also?
Yes, I want to state in a very we usually average middle class person, or for an example, a student life, or middle class women, or usually in the sector of women or girls, basically they prefer the pricing strategy of low to high rather than high to low, because they usually prefer to belong in the category of कि जो सस्ते में मिलता है चलो वो पहले देख लेते हैं.
Not really, Itishri. I think that is something which the mindset has changed. I think with globalization happening, with the markets opening up, with the consumer having more access to what perhaps the global market looks at. So today, if you see the advent of a global brand, today Indian consumer, and particularly when you talk about the woman consumer today, who's educated, who has access to the global brands today, with television coming in, you have so many of these ads coming in of global brands. So what happens is social media again. So with more knowledge, more beliefs about a global brand, the consumer may not necessarily always look at price. But somebody rightly said bundling of benefit. Yes, bundling of benefit can be definitely one of the criteria with respect to price. Yeah. Next.
Sir, one factor could be the ambience of the hotel. When we go in the hotel, when we find the good ambience, we prefer more to pay, and but less ambience, we would not prefer it.
So the ecosystem of the service delivery plays an important role. So same ambience, if you put it into a marketing terminology, we'll say the ecosystem of the service delivery. Right? The same thing applies to doctors and hospitals today also. If it is a good doctor and the hospital amenities are better, it is a much more neater hospital with better doctors, with more state-of-the-art technology, the consumer is ready to pay more. A surgery which is more, let's say, automated today is where the consumer is ready to pay. If and only if he believes that this is the best option available to him. And for him to have the best option available to him is where today, because of a Google, because of searching on the web in terms of the service. So a consumer has choices today. He has a preset mind today. Why? Because he has access to information which he can find out in terms of service delivery. He will compare brands. And then maybe what is important is word of mouth also can play an important role. But as many of you rightly talked about, somebody saying that free pickup, free drop, free internet, free breakfast, आजकल ये भी common हो गया. So how do I differentiate if I'm talking about the hotel industry? How do I differentiate? Can I maybe tell him tomorrow that what if I offer children up to the age of, let's say, 10 years free? I will not charge them for an extra bed. Or what if they say that I'll give you a conducted sightseeing tour free of cost? What is important is how do I bundle more and more of benefits? I would have paid for that sightseeing tour. The hotel says, I'll organize it for you. Right? So that can create a service differentiation. Free salons, free spas. I think that's something that is coming up in most. So in free internet, everybody's clean. So how do I create that service differentiation? That plays an important role. There's somebody who...
Sir, actually, I have a question regarding the bundle of services. Are people are really looking for the higher the number of services, so I will pay higher, or they're looking for the what kind of required services as a customer I need. Based on that, they are providing the money for that service.
Okay, Samvita, let me give you an example of since we are talking about hotel industry, let me give you an example of how hotels like Ginger and all of them started. Ginger started as a hotel which was more targeted for the traveling salesman, right? And it was initially priced at maybe 1,500 rupees, typically, that every traveling salesperson could afford. So affordability factor. But what did they do in order to provide such kind of services at a lesser price? They said that there are certain things that the consumer has to do himself. It was a self check-in. There was no bellboy or anybody who would take your luggage there. You had to make your own tea and coffee in the room. You had to come down to the breakfast table. So I will obviously minimize certain things in terms of my service delivery if I'm trying to look at the pricing part of it, right? But if I can create a value positioning that this is something which is from the house of Tatas, which means trust, which means a relationship with the brand, a strong bonding with the brand. And I'm saying, and so the customer believes that if it is a service delivery from the house of Tatas, it must be good. Same with...
So then we can say that not only the number of services, but also the quality of the services they are providing.
Always. Quality of service always is definitely a item which the service provider has to keep in mind. I think the rest of the class, can you please unmute? Can you please mute yourself? Quite a few people who've got their mics on. Okay. Anybody else with any other view? If not, let me share my screen with you. Anybody else? Am I missing out somebody? CRs, please tell me if I'm missing out anybody. Let me share the screen right now. Are you able to see the slide, guys? I cannot move it into a slideshow format. I think there's some error happening on my MacBook though. But if you look at a typical, so are you able to see the slide as such here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So if you look at the importance of services today, when we are talking about the GDP or the GNP of the country, in terms of services as a percentage of employment today is almost as high as 80%. So if you look at 80% of the employment is something that is dependent on services, you can very well understand the fact that today we are moving from having earlier a line of difference between product and services to having a thin line of difference between product and services. So this is what we talked about, which says that services offered differentiate goods competitively. We discussed it in detail, saying that we are differentiating a product again today dependent on the services that it offers. We also talked about the fact that services are co-created. The consumer is also the producer. We talked about the concept of a prosumer. If you look at examples like so let's take these two, a Domino and an Indigo. What is it that comes to your mind when we talk about, in terms of a differentiation? How is a Domino, how is a Indigo, different in terms of the value positioning?
They are always on time.
Priceless.
Good service.
Can we have those who have not participated to come in first? Nobody?
Budget friendly.
Budget friendly. Okay. What else?
Fastest service.
So if you look at both of them, where they're not, akin to the philosophy of a JIT concept, just in time, Domino said 30 minutes ya to free, which means it said that we strict to the timelines that we offer. A product which was more in terms of the services that it offered. Even if you look at Eureka Forbes for that matter, it had, the salesman who would come across, and he was somebody who was empathetic towards the family. He cared for the family. There was an element of assurance, right? So when we are talking about a service differentiation, there has to be an empathy factor, that the person has to listen. So what is another key attribute here is that the service provider has to be a good listener. He has to understand the needs of what the consumer wants, right? Same thing with Indigo, on-time flights and on-time schedules. Let's take the case of Horlicks and Diet Coke. Horlicks and Diet Coke, in terms of service differentiation, how do these two products stand out?
Basically, they both are focusing on health of customer.
Very good. Both Horlicks and Diet Coke focus on not just the nutritional aspect, but they also talk about the benefits that the consumer will have if they either go in for a Diet Coke or a Horlicks, because the Diet Coke says 0 calories, 0 sugar. Here was Horlicks, which said all the necessary ingredients that the body needs. Ponds and Dettol.
So freshness and good fragrance of your body. In the body.
Even with Dettol?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What else?
So the reliability with these products offer, like Ponds and Dettol, they're most trusted brands. So we can.
Hygiene. Both are skincare products.
Yeah, there was somebody else who was trying to say something.
So for hygiene.
Hygiene, but Ponds for hygiene, how would that?
For Dettol.
For Dettol, yes. I'm saying for Ponds and Dettol together. If you look at both these brands. Yeah. Naukri, I'll talk about all of them. Naukri.com and MakeMyTrip.com. In terms of services that we offer, what is it that basically acts as a differentiator?
They're easily accessible. We can.
Convenience to.
What does a Naukri.com? I mean, why do people go to a Naukri.com? To find a job? To post a requirement?
Yes.
If I'm a recruiter, I will post a requirement saying that this is what I want. If I'm looking for a job, I go to Naukri.com, I post my CV. But you guys don't have to do that because we'll take care of it. Make my trip. What is it that I do?
Book ticket.
Book services.
So till some time back, a Make My Trip was more to do with only a flight booking or a train booking and whatever. Now, if you look at a Make My Trip, it is giving you a bundle of benefits. It helps you in booking your tickets, whether it's a flight or a train. It helps you in identifying the hotels also. It gives you an array of hotels which you can look at. It also gives you an option in terms of selecting maybe vehicles or, if you would want from an airport, from a pickup point to a drop point. So essentially here we are talking about a convenience factor. Naukri.com says, I'm a platform. You want to apply for a job? Come, I'll help you with it. It tells the recruiter boss you are looking for talent. We have a whole database of talent. Yahin pe dekh lo. Right? Same thing to the person who's looking for a job, saying that post your CV here and we'll find a recruiter. We'll have a recruiter looking around for you. So all these aspects, if you see, JIT is used as a service differentiator just in time. If you look at Indigo and Domino's, when you talk about a Diet Coke and one was Diet Coke, what was the other one that we said?
Horlicks.
Yeah, so we're talking about a low-calorie health drink. We are talking about the focus is on the word health drink.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, that Eureka Forbes thing that was, that was mentioned in the previous slide. Is it about like from a closed source? Like I came to know that Eureka Forbes, they particularly asked their employees to provide a demo wherever they were asked, and also they were asked to give a positive body expression, like that, to smile whenever they were performing the services. Is it why it is a differentiator, sir? Like, is it why?
So essentially that was a platform that Eureka Forbes used classically as a differentiator. One, they said that our person who visits you is concerned for your family. It used to show a person who would, so if you see the earlier ads that talked about even a little child sitting down and saying, ye uncle jo hai, ye bol rahe the. So it is about saying that one, the salesman is there to educate the family, has a concern for the family, and hence there is an amount of trust and relationship, right? So the relationship and trust factor became very synonymous with Eureka Forbes. Unka print ad also said the same thing, that we care for you. And as you rightly said, that the salesman was supposedly somebody who was to put on a very pleasant face, was to put on a smile on his face. So there is a relationship factor or a trust factor that is to develop from there, right? And of course, when we talk about Make My Trip and Naukri.com, we're talking about convenience. So if you look at relationship management, if you're talking about convenience, if you're talking about customer knowledge, again, key attributes which helps in terms of creating a service differentiation. Now, this is what you people already said, how services differ from goods. One, they are intangible. They cannot be seen, felt, or there is no physical shape. They are inseparable. The production and the consumption also has to happen at the same time, right? Heterogeneous in terms of the quality being offered, obviously with people and processes, there has to be some amount of heterogeneity with respect to the services as compared to a product. Ek batch size mein product nikal gaya, you will have the same shape and size. But in terms of services, though every service provider tends to look at it, but then there can be some kind of a deviation somewhere. And of course, perishable, that is the cannot be stored. So all these 4 points, you people have already spoken about. Now, components, I think more or less you talked about it. So empathy factor, Eureka Forbes here, caring, individualized attention to the customers. Somebody asked me, so the empathy factor is what Eureka Forbes tried to talk about big time. The assurance is what Eureka Forbes talked about big time. The knowledge and the courtesy of the employees. You walk into maybe any of the good food joints today and you do not know a few of the items. The waiter who's serving you should be able to explain to you saying that this item has these things available. So that becomes something which is, something that is very important. Responsiveness, whether it is a product or whether it is a service, even in terms of product also. I've walked into an electronic showroom and I find the sales guy talking to somebody on the mobile phone for 20 minutes. I will obviously walk away from that particular shop. The responsiveness is the ability to provide prompt service. I have an issue in terms of a sales, I have a sales query, but I do not get a reply from the store coming in. Is a customer lost? There's a lot of dissonance. The reliability. This also is a key component of service quality. The trust factor will only happen if the right service is provided at the right time, which means, again, come back to knowledge. The service provider has to have adequate knowledge about the service that he is offering. Right? This is the serve call model that I was talking about. I am unable to get this thing across. But if you look at the gap, it's very difficult for you to see it right now. Look at gap one. Gap one is a gap between management perception of consumer expectations vis-a-vis the expected service. Right? So if the management doesn't understand what the consumer wants, if the ground reality information the management doesn't have, or the management has not completely read the consumer's mind, then there is going to be a big gap between what the consumer expects and what the management has understood that he expects. So this gap one is basically a component of a lot of other gaps also. If you look at gap two as per this particular model is the difference between what the management perceives and what the management translates the perceptions as. I have employed a team of market research agencies to collect information. What if they have collected wrong information from the field? If they have collected wrong information from the field, that means my perception of the consumer needs are very, very different. So if the management has got the perceptions wrong in terms of the consumer's need, when it tells the manufacturing unit or the service delivery team, there is going to be a gap because they have not understood the needs properly. If they have not understood the needs properly, they will not be able to perceive. They will not be able to translate the perceptions. Now, if that be the case, if they've not been able to translate the perception of the consumer's needs properly, there will be a gap between what they have perceived and what they deliver. Are you understanding these three steps? Very simple steps. My information from ground zero is wrong. So management has got the wrong information with them. If management has got a wrong information with them, they will obviously translate into wrong perception. If it translates into wrong perception, then the delivery of the service is also going to be very, very different. So if the delivery of the service is going to be different, I have already communicated through my marketing channel saying that this is this is in terms of the service that I offer. वो पहले से बना दिया था. My marketing communication has been made earlier, but the service which I am ready to provide to the consumer is very different from the communication that I've given. Another case of dissonance that can happen here. So if you look at gap 4, that is a classic case of dissonance that happens at this particular level. Now, if the management has perceived the needs of the consumers wrongly, then the expected service is also different. Perceived service is wrong and the expected services, so there's a gap there also that needs to be plugged. So to ensure all these things are in place, it is very important for the marketeer in the services sector to focus on 1, word of mouth, 2, in terms of understanding their personal needs, and 3 is in terms of looking at past experience. Maybe, in terms of service delivery in certain pockets somewhere, maybe it would have failed. So how do I ensure that these gaps are plugged is what every marketer needs to look at. Having said that, in service delivery, there are 2 components. One is the core service, other is the supplementary service. Core service, for example, a hotel industry. When I'm saying a core service, what am I referring to? If I'm looking at a hotel, core service is I go down there to take rest. I'm traveling, I need to go down, I need a place to take rest. But along with that, if I'm given free breakfast, if I'm given a free pickup, free drop, those becomes supplementary services or augmented services. So when a consumer is trying to look at deciding in terms of in terms of taking a decision as to which hotel does he look at, he's looking at a mix of both core service and supplementary service. Service mix is more or less the same as, when we talk about the product mix. One, we need to identify what new services we need to introduce. So we need to understand what stage of the product life cycle are we in. Are we in the introductory stage? Are we in the growth stage? Are we in the maturity stage? And then determine what new services we need to introduce. The next step would be is determining the target market, which are the target markets I need to look at. And then in terms of the bundle of services that I offer, I need to take a decision in terms of understanding what existing services I need to maintain and what to eliminate. Similarly, when we talk about place, I think you talked about it. What is very important is convenience. How many service providers do we have with the nearest locality? So what are the number of outlets? Whether it is a direct or an indirect distribution, right? Scheduling. I need to understand that if it is, for example, somebody talked about urban clap. If I get my air conditioned serviced across today, I need to ensure that I'll be again. So the consumer is supposedly going to come back to me maybe in 1 month, 2 months, 3 months time in terms of servicing it. So I need to ensure my service delivery should be in place in 3 months time. So when we talk about scheduling, we are talking about sustainability here also. Pricing, we talked about it. So we need to talk about, how do we bundle? So we should be bundle all everything and say, this is a price that I'm offering. For example, a Make My Trip says, I will provide a hotel to you. So you give me a budget. I'll provide an air ticket. I'll provide a hotel to you, and I'll provide a vehicle for you also, provided I know what budget you're looking at. So the bundle of benefits, or I'm saying, I have free Wi-Fi, I have free salon, I have free, I'll ensure that in your next visit to us, you get a 50% off or a 30% off or a 25% off. Relationship marketing and services, I think we amply discussed this. Internal marketing, we have discussed earlier, treating employees as customers and developing benefits around them. Different types of marketing services we talked about, internal marketing, external marketing, and interactive marketing. So this interactive marketing between customers and the employees is basically what we are talking about, is the co-creation aspect, which is slowly gaining a lot of ground. This is again a model that your book has, which talks about the root causes of service failure. Could be people, could be processes, could be technology, could be servicescape. Servicescape in terms of ambience, somebody talked about. In terms of processes, as I said, if it is very complex, the ease of use, for example, I'm saying that if I have to get into a particular website, or if I have to order something on an online platform, it takes me 20 minutes to get into that particular web page or to make a payment. If that be the case, obviously, it will result in a service failure, because I will say to hell with it, what time leta hai, chhod do, right? Or if so, complexity, the ease of use, and in terms of the support that is there today, if there is a problem in the product that I bought and the service is something that my local distributor, local service center is not able to provide, right? I will have to wait for 2 days. Now imagine hot scorching sun, and I'm told that the service mechanic will only be available after 2 days. Now there is a classic case of a service failure, because I will need to ensure. So you go back to the previous slide, I need to ensure my scheduling is in place, right? Similarly, in terms of people, whether the people, when I'm talking about the employees that I have, whether there is a right fit, whether he meets the requirements that the service needs him to have, does he have a role clarity? Many a times you would have seen in few places, you'll have that poor guy, he's fed up with the job. And in typically a service industry, is fed up with the job, but he has a completely different look on his face, is not interested. So that's a classic case of a failure with respect to people. Similarly, when you talk about servicescape, the ambience, the layout, the spatial layout in terms of how you're maintaining your products and services becomes important. And then what is also important is, if I have to improve service quality, I need to look at few things. So listening is often ignored. It's very important that you need to listen to what the consumer wants, right? The reliability factor, surprising customers. All of a sudden, he gets a bouquet or a cake or something on his birthday or on his anniversary. Yeah, those are small things, but then they have a big thing they have a big impact to play. Right? Employee research, in terms of understanding that if today I'm delivering a service, what is important is my employee who's delivering the service. I need to have a constant information about him. Does he need a training? And in some cases, is he somebody who's dissatisfied with the job? So employee research, teamwork, are listening, surprising customers, and in services, what is important is to have a fair play, a fair level playing ground, right? So these were some areas which I thought we would talk about in terms of services, because please understand, we have companies in the services sector coming in and visiting us regularly, whether it is consulting, whether it is IT, whether it is ITES, or whether it is the pure service industry like the Taj or any of the ITC group coming in. They would obviously be asking you questions which would more or less be around these areas that we discussed. It is for you to build up on these areas and how to present that in the interview. Right? Any queries? Now, I already have a couple of mails that has come to me from students individually. Good that you have started writing to me about their groups, where many students have not been participating, many students have been playing truant. I must thank the students who've written to me, because that is going to help me big time in terms of understanding the performers and non-performers, which otherwise also I would have been able to find out. So just give me a minute. Just give me a minute. Okay. Avinash Mahapatra. Avinash Patnaik.
Present, sir.
Avinash Patnaik, where are you? Let me stop. Let me make a stop share right now. Yep. Aditi.
Yes, sir.
Aditya Agarwal.
Present, sir.
Aishwarya. Aliva.
Present, sir.
Alok.
Present, sir.
Anuradha.
Present, sir.
Aritra.
Present, sir.
Alok Ranjan Bhuya, is he present?
Yes, sir. I am present.
Aritra.
Present, sir.
Arpan.
Present, sir.
Arpan Narayan Bohidar. Ashish.
Present, sir.
Abik.
Yes, sir.
Bhaskar. Chandita.
Present, sir.
Chinmay.